In this video, I'm going to be covering Chapter 4, Challenge Problem 4.9, turning your user into a Leet Axor. So the first thing I've done is I've gotten my code window ready. I'm programming in Python here, so I'm going to go ahead and paste the instructions into my code here, just make it easier to see. It wants me to write a script. In this case, we're going to skip this part of creating a special py file because that's irrelevant to this particular lecture. We just want to go ahead and put it in main.py. Write a script that asks the user for some input with the following prompt. Enter some text. Then use the replace method to convert the text entered by the user into LeetSpeak, making the following changes. And then this tells you what changes we're going to make. So let's tackle this one piece at a time. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to prompt the user for some input. In order to gather user input from the chapter, you should know we use the input function. We want to be able to store this. So let's call a variable, let's create a variable called user input equals, we'll use input. Then here we'll put our prompt. Enter some text. Just to make sure this works so far, I'm going to go hit run. All right, good, no errors. Now what we want to do is we want to replace letters to make LeetSpeak. So there are a number of different ways to do this. Let's start with just the first one. So in this case, we want to take the user input and we want to replace every A with the number 4. And then we need to assign that value back to something. So we can just say our user input equals our user input dot replace. And you can even see the helpful pop-up in the editor. It tells us what it's looking for per parameter. So the old string, so basically the things we want to replace. In this case, we're just replacing A's, comma, and then our next parameter is our new string. So remember, we need to put 4 as a character, because if we put the number 4, that's something completely different, and that's covered in the chapter. Okay. So let's just start with that. First of all, let's run it to make sure it works. Okay, that took a moment. Let's go ahead and put some stuff in here. Nothing happens. Just to make sure that it's actually outputting, let's go ahead and forget about the rest for now. And we're going to say display output. So we will use the print command and we'll just output user input. So let's hit run. I'm going to hit A, and then some other letters. You can see it's replaced all the A's with 4s. So that's working. So we need to do that for each of these. There's a number of different ways to do it. The first thought you might have is to go ahead and just keep doing this for every replacement. So B becomes 8. And then I'll do one more here. Replace E with 3. So we hit run here. We can do A, B, B, E, E, and then some other stuff. And you can see that this is working. And this might be fine. And from an efficiency standpoint, this is what the compiler is going to boil your code down to anyway. And it's very easy to read. But you can also use something called method chaining. What that does is you take the result of calling a method or function. And in this case, you can just call the next function on it. So we can also, right afterwards, say replace B with 8. And after that, we could say replace E with 3. And that'll do the same thing. But as you can see, as this string starts to get longer, as this line starts to get longer and longer and longer, it becomes very hard to read. So one way you can handle this is you can use the the backslash to continue your code onto the next line. So in this case, we can do this and line this up nicely. And it becomes a little easier to read. And you can see we have an error here. I had an extra space after that, which it didn't like. So I can hit run, and now we'll try it again. You can see it works. There are some other ways to do this. It can get a little tricky to read, but I could put the parenthesis on the last line and then chain them like this. I personally don't like this. It gets kind of hard to read. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So in this case, my preferred method would be just to use these backslashes. So let's go ahead and finish the code doing that. Replace, and we want to replace L's with 1s. And we'll put another backslash. Now we want to replace O's with 0. And we want to replace S's with 5s. And we want to replace T's with 7. Oops. Go back to that. 7. Okay, so let's just test to see if this worked. All right, so far so good. So let's do a string with all of these in it. A, B, E, L, Z, O, S, and T. Let's see what it shows. So we got 4, 8, 3, 1, 0, 5, 7. Okay, so this works. So whichever way you decided to, or you would decide to write this, whether you'd put on each new line the user input equals, it's fine. I would always take into account what is the most readable method. In this case, the way our compiler works is it's going to boil it down into separate lines anyway. So it's not like this is any more efficient. So if you had any questions on this challenge, feel free to email me or start a conversation in Canvas. Thank you.